The first sponsorship on Warden's Watch is Trailerrunner Wireless Internet, available in Coos County and Washington County, Maine. High-speed internet for rural areas. And they're the company I work for other than podcasting, and I thank you for your support. This is high-speed internet for rural areas, making my podcast happen and making businesses happen in remote places, as well as bringing technology to you folks when you live out in the country. Please go to mytrailrunner.com and like the page on Facebook as well. That would help them a lot and help me to continue Warden's Watch. Guidefitter.com. Guidefitter, bridging you to the outdoors while providing a quality platform for guides and outfitters for you to select from. Guidefitter is the best place to get discounts on gear if you're an outdoor professional. As a game warden, I'm a member of the Outdoor Government Program, which has over 80 quality brands to get discounts from. It's free to join. Yes, free to join. And all you need to do is prove that you're an active outdoor government employee. There are all kinds of products available. Apparel, boots, archery equipment, optics, backpacks, cameras, watches, ammo, anything, you name it. And while you're there, check out the articles, information, and stories that you'll be inspired from. So before you head out to work in the outdoors or start your next outdoor adventure, check out guidefitter.com and get discounts on your everyday or every so often outdoor equipment. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders for Guidefitter. RODgeeks.com. RODgeeks is a company that designs and builds fishing rods. They are a partner with St. Croix Rods and have been building fishing rods since 2008. They use St. Croix's expertise in all their rod designs, so you can trust the rods. The RG42 is a one-piece travel rod. Performs like a much longer rod, but is compact enough to keep anywhere so you can fish anytime. They offer it as a kit that includes rod, reel, fishing line, case, pliers, and a tackle tray. Put your favorite baits in the tray and you have everything you need to go fishing. It may look unconventional, but this rod really works. Pick up an RG42 kit today and you won't regret it. Please join me, Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and other Game Wardens on our adventures protecting wildlife, saving lives, and having fun, all while serving the public and the natural resources of our planet. Listen to the tales and experiences of those who work in the outdoors while being entertained with stories about encounters with poachers, wildlife investigation, murder investigation, near-death experiences, search and rescue missions, wildlife interactions from game wardens around the country and around the world. When I retired, I realized I couldn't let go of that legacy, but rather wanted to share the passion, the commitment, and the stories of those men and women that call themselves game wardens. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and this is Warden's Watch. Episode 5, interview with Conservation Officer Graham Courtney, Seacoast Game Warden. And it's a whole lot different being a Seacoast Game Warden. You have all the aspects of being an inland game warden, and you have the seacoast to be responsible for, which adds a whole new dynamic into being a game warden. It has the sea life, which is commercially fished and recreationally fished, on top of all your inland responsibilities with deer, bear, wildlife conflicts. And this is what we're going to hear from Graham today, is that the challenges, but with the challenges come a lot of extra help. Wardens from around the state of New Hampshire come down and help Graham with what we call the JEA, Joint Enforcement Agreement. And that's with the federal government. So we have a grant that actually helps us out because we extend ourselves beyond our 3-mile limit. Each state has a 3-mile limit. That's what our limit is for coastal work. Beyond 3 miles, it becomes the federal government's responsibility, but the federal government doesn't have enough people to enforce all the rules that they make. So they contract with states. So they contract with New Hampshire, they contract with Maine, they contract with Massachusetts. And as we go around the country to do interviews with a lot of those states that have large coastal aspects, we're going to hear about JEA, the Joint Enforcement Agreement. So, and that's just having states help the federal government enforce the regulations to make sure our commercial fisheries are sustainable is the long-term plan. There's a lot of controversy around that. The biologists say one thing, the fishermen say another. But, when it's all said and done, I think we have the same goal in mind. The fishermen want to keep on fishing. They want to have a sustainable resource so they can fish. And the biologists want a sustainable resources so they can fish. And in between there is the enforcement. In order, you can make all the rules you want, but without enforcement, you're not going to have an effective management plan. And that's where conservation officers, federal agents come into play when it comes into federal waters. So you're going to hear about that from Grant Courtney. You're going to hear about that from some other wardens as we go around the coast. And for New Hampshire, we only have 13 miles of coast. That doesn't sound like a whole lot, and it isn't, but it's a very active 13 miles. We have a lot of commercial fisheries that land in New Hampshire. And we have a lobster fishery. We have a striped bass fishery, very similar to a lot of seacoast areas around the eastern seaboard. So, and we're going to talk about those. We're going to talk about the industries, and we're going to talk about the things that affect you and us. And when you think about a natural resource, the ocean is such a broad natural resource for the United States of America, Canada, and around the world. And we need to really focus on that because it can give us a sustainable food source. We're now growing things in the ocean, fish, shellfish. So there's a lot of aquaculture that comes along with this. But I hope you sit back and enjoy episode 5, Seacoast Warden Graham Courtney.
So you've always wanted to be a game warden. I said, no, it really wasn't something that even crossed my mind until later on in life. I didn't start as a New Hampshire conservation officer till I was 40 years old. So, I chased the skiing dream out west. I tried a lot of different things, but I always wanted to be outside. I always loved to hunt and fish.
That gives a lot of people a lot of hope because I have a lot of older guys come up to me and say, hey, how old do you have to be? Am I too old to be a game warden? And they're, touching 40. And I always say no because we have no age requirements.
Right.
But, and here you are, age of 40 coming on.
40, yeah. I received an associate's degree back in 1994 in forestry from University of New Hampshire. And, that's what was the requirement, was an associate's degree. Even though it was 20 years old, it was still enough.
Still a degree.
Yeah, to get me in. And I think, I brought some different things I like to think to the table as having some life experience, and it's worked out so far. They're letting me keep working. So.
Yeah, and I tell kids that associate's degree is so important, especially if you don't like school. You go do your 2 years, you get an associate's. You get a piece of paper, you got a degree. If you go to a 4-year school, you don't like it in 2 years, you got 2 years worth of credits, which still is, it works for us.
Right.
But, it's nice to have that piece of paper with an associate's. So I always say, hey, start there if you don't know, if you're testing the waters, or sometimes I say go to the military because they'll pay you to do it, Right. So, and then you get the same requirement 2-year military, or go to a police department in 2 years if they don't take anything. So to build that foundation. But, I did an associate's degree as well, and, didn't go on from there, but I traveled like you did. I went out and did the National Park Service thing across the country. So I think that's pretty important for those that don't really like school or don't know, or, to get that piece of paper after 2 years.
Yeah, and you're not, people commit to 4-year degrees, and, they may, you're 18. How do you know what you want to do the rest of your life at that age when you go to college? So I think some people are able to figure that out. I certainly wasn't one. So that associate's degree kept some doors open for me, and, I kind of figured it out as I went. And then, when it dawned on me, hey, New Hampshire Fish and Game, I could be outside. I could do what I love, to hunt and fish. I sowed my wild oats. I traveled. I did what I wanted. And now I want to settle here in New Hampshire, be close to my family. And it's just been a great fit.
Yeah, you're doing all those outdoor things. And, yeah.
Yeah, it's, as a sportsman, growing up as a sportsman, we always looked at game wardens. They were the top tier of sportsmen in my book. That's how I kind of looked at it, that these guys were the best of the best. They were out there working with wildlife, with hunters and fishermen every day, and they had woods lore, and so it was a great sense of accomplishment for me to join the ranks of the Game Wardens of New Hampshire.
Yeah, and that's something you built up to that point too, your whole life. That's what you're out in the outdoors building, a resume, so to speak, to be a game warden. It just took you a little longer than does some, but
it took a little longer to grow up, that's all.
Yeah, no, and I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I wish I took a little longer to grow up myself, and instead of jumping right into this job right away, I got an opportunity to travel, and I really enjoyed it. So, but I would have liked to have done it a little longer. So,
well, you did it the other way, where you start early and you're able to retire young enough where you can still enjoy life and be active and go on a whole new adventure.
Yeah, and do you love the Seacoast? Is that where you want it to be? Because you're right on the coast of New Hampshire.
It is. I grew up in coastal New Hampshire. I grew up in Southampton. My uncle was a commercial lobsterman. We always had boats on the tidal rivers and headed out to the ocean on a regular basis. So it's what I'm familiar with. I also feel it's where I'm the most effective because I know the community. I know the players. I know a little bit. I was never a commercial fisherman, but I've always been around it. So Seacoast is, I think, where I wanted to be because that's where my family is. But I think it's where I best serve the state because it's what I'm familiar with.
And that's a unique niche because, me being an inland guy, I like the Seacoast. I like visiting, but I get seasick. So that's a problem.
Well, I do too, but not when I'm working because when we're working, we're always moving. You know what I mean? The boat's always moving. I can get seasick, but I don't tell many people that.
No, you will now, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but
it's all right, but you work through it. Just like anything, you can't let a little something that that bothers you and seasickness is not the worst thing in the world.
When I was a kid, we'd go out deep sea fishing, and I would eat saltines all the way out to pack my stomach, my dad said. So I'd eat a sleeve of saltines, and it seemed to do the job, actually. I'd fish all day. I'd eat another sleeve on the way back. So
and it's mental, too, I think. Your dad told you that, and you believe that was going to help. And
you're probably absolutely right, How about those bands and stuff? You ever think those work? Is that a mental thing, too, the pressure bands?
I've tried the bands. I brought a sailboat up from the Bahamas one year with my father. So I bought everything under the sun. I bought the bands. I bought the patches behind the ear. I didn't notice much with either of those, but there's a new product out there called Zen Trip. It's a dissolvable tab that goes on your tongue. And I went out tuna fishing this year. It was rolly. I never felt a thing. So I really believe in that Zen Trip product. I bought as much as I could find at Amazon.com or whatever.
Did it affect you? Because I know, like, the other stuff, I hate taking it because it makes me feel sick before I even get seasick. The Dramamine and stuff, I hate that stuff.
It made me drowsy. That was the only thing I noticed, but I never even felt a tiny bit seasick. So I really believe in it.
Yeah, well, that's interesting.
We need
And what size sailboat did you bring up from the Bahamas? That sounds like an adventure in itself.
Yeah, my dad was always an avid sailor, and a friend of his kept a 52-foot Hinckley down in the Bahamas in the winter and would bring it back up to Massachusetts in the summer. So one year after ski season was over, I was in Colorado. My dad called and said, hey, we need another deckhand. So I jumped on board and fished the whole way up. And, we got in the inland waterway and went to all kinds of different anchorages. It was really great. It was just the same time as the perfect storm. So we got beat up between the Bahamas and the inland waterway and in the Florida, Georgia area where you can tuck in shore.
Yeah.
But, we lost gear off the boat. We lost the autopilot. We got really beat up. My dad split his leg open, but there was no way to get any stitches or anything out there. So it was an adventure.
When you say get beat up, what kind of seas were you experiencing in that?
We were in probably 30-foot
Oh,
seas.
My goodness.
Full harnesses. You had to be strapped in, and, it was some scary stuff, but looking back at it, it was it was pretty terrifying at the time, but what a great memory.
What a great experience, huh?
Yeah.
I got to work on Lake Superior for the Park Service, National Apostle Islands, National Lake Shore. I got to run a 25-foot whaler out there, and I got into some seas, and you'd go down into these gullets and then climb the other side. And I know I went to get out some biologists one time on one of the far islands, and I wanted to get them on the boat because I was scared to be by myself out there because it was gnarly, and I'm like, someone else has got to experience this because if I just tell them about it, they're not going to believe it. So, I went on the lee side of the island. The lee side of the island had 8-foot seas on it. So we picked them up and went in, and docking was a challenge too. But that was a nice thing. The Park Service, trains you. Then they give you these big boats to run and stuff, and they gave me some really good training out there. But yeah, it's the closest thing I've been, and that was a quick trip. I probably did it in 4 hours, 5 hours, and I can't imagine being hung in that for a long time because that's gnarly.
Yeah, probably 3 days. But once you got into the inland waterway, now we're protected. I think I did kiss the ground when we
I think I would have too.
Got to our anchorage for the first night, and then the inland waterway is just basically a river that goes north to south inside the coast.
Right, and you're protected the whole way.
Yeah.
So no, you've been in seas like that with Fish and Game at all?
No, we've gone out. We won't we won't put ourselves at risk or put anyone that might have to come and assist us at risk in seas like that unless we have to. If there's a life-saving measure, we've been out in some 8-10 footers where we've had boats that were broken down, that we've got distress calls, we've assisted the Coast Guard, but unless we have a reason for it, we don't want to put ourselves at risk and moreover put someone else at risk that might have to come and save us if we got in trouble. We've been in some good seas. We got a 28-foot safe boat, handles the swells really well. It's fully sealed cabin. So there's been a few times where we've been a little bit, dicey conditions, but we don't put ourselves in that position unless there's a need to do it.
Yeah. Now, the lobster industry is pretty important for New Hampshire, isn't it? Or the whole East Coast, really.
It really is. And as far as New Hampshire, with only 14 miles of coastline, we have a strong commercial fishing community. It's got a strong heritage in New Hampshire. There's guys that have been doing it generations in their family. Lobstering being our number one commercial fishing entity. Some of the other things like draggers and ground fishing boats are slowly fading out because of federal regulations, and based on the fish stock is no longer there to sustain it. So lobstering is one that is held on. The Gulf of Maine, which New Hampshire waters are in, has a strong lobster population. We do, and because of our strict enforcement of the rules, that's part of the reason why the fishery has stayed productive. So I think that's really important for us to get out there, and it's a big part of my job is lobster and the enforcement of the regulations, because it's people's livelihood, and if we abuse it, it's going to be something that's not going to bounce back easily.
Yeah, are we seeing any diseases? I know there's some coming up the coast, Rhode Island experiences, because maybe that warm water interacts there, because that's as far south as the lobster goes is Rhode Island, right?
Pretty much. There's not much. And they're suffering down there. They're suffering down in the Cape. The lobster numbers are down. There's a shell disease that's coming through, which basically looks like the shell is beginning to decay. It doesn't affect the meat or the quality of the lobster, but it's not appealing looking. So if you go to a fancy restaurant, you pay $60 for a lobster dinner, you don't want this lobster on your plate that's looks like the shell's decaying or has a shell disease. So it does affect the value, and we'd see it 1 in 100 lobsters. Now I think last year we're seeing it more about 1 in 5 lobsters has some sign of this shell disease.
And what are some of the regulations if a lobsterman's going to go out? I mean, recreationally we have people that do it, sort of, and then we have commercial aspects of it. So, and I would imagine more recreational problems on the coast than commercial. It
is. We got any New Hampshire resident can buy a 5-trap lobster license that allows them to fish up to and no more than 5 lobster traps. The next license is a part-time commercial license. Again, any New Hampshire resident can buy a 100-trap part-time commercial. They can fish up to 100 traps. And then we go into the full commercial 600-trap, 800-trap, 1,200-trap licenses and federal licenses. So one of the main things that we enforce is the harvesting of female lobsters. So if a female egg-bearing lobster is caught, it is required that any commercial fisherman notch the second flipper from the right in a V-shaped pattern, and that notch will stay in that lobster's tail for 4 to 5 years. So if that lobster is ever caught again, regardless of whether it's bearing eggs or not, it has to be immediately released into the water. So we're looking for V-notch female lobsters. We're looking for egg-bearing female lobsters. If anyone harvests an egg-bearing lobster, they're killing thousands of baby lobsters by taking that in. So, first thing we do when we stop a lobster boat, got lobsters on board, we're checking for V-notch, we're checking for egg-bearing, and we're checking for length. They can be, they have to be a minimum of 3 1/4 inches in state waters, and they can have a maximum of 5 inches. So it's kind of a slot limit. The oversized, the big lobsters over 5 inches, that's a breeder. That lobster is vital to the resource. We want those released. The ones under 3 1/4 inches, they haven't reached reproductive age yet, so we want those lobsters to go back and be in the water long enough at least to go through a reproductive cycle or two to repopulate. So, size and egg-bearing or V-notch females are the first thing, and then gear. There's a lot of requirements on lobster gear. There's sizes of the vents. There's biodegradable parts. If a lobster trap is lost, the biodegradable parts are meant to disintegrate so that the lobsters can escape. There's The lines have to be of a sinking matter. There's whale-safe components to it in case a whale isn't entangled in it.
And all these restrictions are to either preserve the lobster or preserve sea life.
Right.
It's we're not doing it to be a pain in the butt. We're doing it because, your gear gets lost and it disintegrates and the lobsters go free. So we're not killing a bunch of lobsters every time you lose gear. And vent holes, the little ones get out, the big ones stay in. That's the theory behind that, right?
Right. It's all about sustaining the resource. So it is a good feeling that you're maintaining a resource that's a lot of people's livelihood. I myself get the 5-trap lobster license. I go out with my dad. We have a blast with it. We don't catch a whole lot of lobsters, but enough to have a lobster dinner every couple of weeks, and it's just a fun way to get on the water and get hands-on with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, and people can see, too. I mean, if you're in a grocery store and you're looking on the lobster tanks, you can see that V-notch in the tail. So I know I've had to make a few trips myself from northern New Hampshire to the Seacoast to release a V-notch or an egg bearing or something like that, because I guess sometimes they must slip through the cracks if they end up in the grocery store.
They can slip through the cracks. We might check a federal boat that has 10,000 pounds of lobster on board. So,
wow.
And they'll fish overnight. So if a boat with 10,000 pounds of lobster, which may be 8,000 lobsters, one V-notch may slip through. Mm-hmm. And then an egg-bearing lobster, that lobster may not be bearing eggs at the time it was caught.
Oh, yeah.
They can drop eggs when they're in the tank at a grocery store. So a lot of times we'll get lobsters that may not have been egg-bearing at the time that they were caught, but they've released those eggs while they've been at the store or in transit. So that does happen. Every once in a while we'll get a call from the market basket, come pick up a lobster. It's had some eggs on it. So.
Yeah. And besides the coastal stuff, you guys do inland stuff too.
Well, we have the highest population of deer in the entire state is in southeastern New Hampshire. So hunting is as busy as it is anywhere else in the state. We have inland duck, coastal duck, and sea duck. So waterfowling is huge down our way. Big amount of turkeys. So we'll check.
And big population of people too.
Right.
So
and a high concentration of people, which can cause conflicts.
Absolutely. Whether it's animals and people, hunters and people. Yeah, no, it's definitely so. You get a lot going on in a little area, so.
Yeah, it's enough. It keeps us busy and it keeps you surprised. You have one plan when you start the day, and it usually turns in another direction before the day's over.
Yeah, it's an adventure every day being a game warden. That's what I kind of miss.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen.
That's the beauty of the job. It's ever changing and it keeps you on your toes, and you're always learning. I'm 5 years in now, and I learn something new every day.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Nope, it's a lot of fun. So if you had to pick out a top case that comes to your mind, how long you been on?
I've been over 5 years now. So
okay.
This past October was my 5-year mark. So it's gone by in the blink of an eye. It really has. It's unbelievable how much time has flown by.
So you're like pushing 45 now, huh?
47 as of December 30th. So
you don't look it.
Oh, thank you. I feel it.
Yeah. So cases in the last 5 years that stand out in your mind as a really good case. You're glad you did it. You're glad you caught that guy. That type of thing. Yeah.
One case that stands out and that I'm proud of, and it really gave me a sense of accomplishment because I was a new hire. I was still in my trainee year. New Hampshire Fish and Game, you're a probationary trainee for the first year. It was my first deer season I was working. I had my training officer was Chris McKee, but I was at that point in my trainee year where I was pretty independent, checking with my trainee officer every couple days.
And the maturity you brought to being a trainee, usually trainees are pretty young guys, and you're in your 40s, so that's pretty significant, I think, and I'm sure that was reflected. Yeah,
they treated me with respect. I got probably cut loose on my own a little quicker. I did have previous law enforcement experience, so I was a police officer in a couple towns. I worked for the State Police Marine Patrol Division as well, so I had some law enforcement experience, and I wasn't completely green. So I was able to get out and work on my own a little quicker than some. It's all when that person's ready. So our department does a great job of feeling out where you're at and giving that person that freedom or reeling in it a little bit if they need a little bit more training. So when I was a trainee, I was, got a tip on a illegal bait pile, went out to inspect it, found blood, drag marks, I was as excited as an actual hunter that sees a deer. I'm like, this is great. And I worked it really hard. I sat in the bushes several nights near the tree stand and the bait pile, and was never, weeks went by. I wasn't able to locate this person. I set up a game camera at the site, but it was hard for me to check the game camera because I didn't want to disturb it too much, and I didn't want to get caught out there. So every week or so I'd check the camera, and I was getting pictures of deer left and right. And then finally, one day I'd getting frustrated. I'm like, I'm going to pull the game camera. I think this guy's abandoned this site. And sure enough, there I got a picture on the game camera of the guy carrying a 5-gallon bucket, dumping apples out. It was a really clear picture of his face. And so I did some research on houses in the area who had hunting licenses. I found a gentleman that his hunting license was suspended for a violation the previous year. I went to the DMV, pulled his driver's license photo. I had my suspect. So
wow.
I drafted my first search warrant, gathered 5 or 6 guys. I mean, there's nothing that makes you feel, more excited than 6 fish and game trucks rolling down a road and pulling into a driveway. It was just awesome. We all rolled out and rapped on the door, and of course, no one's home.
I always hated when that happened.
And then,
so you kicked down the door, right?
I kind of sat there. I'm pretty new, so I'm like, what now? And one of our officers, Mark Hensel, who had a canine, the dog's pulling hard towards the backyard, and let's follow the dog. And the dog led us right to the hunter who was in a tree stand hunting at the time. So not only did we make that case, we got him actively hunting under suspension.
Did he have any illegal bait there too?
He had a little stuff out, not the pile that he had out in the woods, but he had some grain sprinkled out, and boy, was he surprised when we rolled up.
Oh, that's pretty neat to find the homeowner out in a tree stand behind with a canine.
Yeah, with the canine. We pulled him out. We found
I was joking about kicking the door. In my whole 23 years career, we haven't kicked in doors. So no, I know sometimes people claim we kick in doors, but I've never done it.
For fishing game to get what's called a no-knock warrant, where you actually would kick a door down, would be pretty hard pressed to do that. But we ended up finding marijuana plants, poached deer, all kinds of stuff. So it was a great case. The gentleman, straightforward and honest, he owned up to everything. We left there with a truck bed full of evidence.
Wow.
And it was just a real sense of accomplishment where I was training a year, you're kind of trying to get your feet underneath you, and I felt like, today I feel like a game warden.
And you put a lot of work into it too.
Huge amount of work, and weeks go by and you lose that initial excitement, and this is work. So it's fun. It's a sense of accomplishment, but people think we just run around the woods and play all day. A lot of these cases we put hours and hours of time into, sitting underneath a bush until dark every night. When you want to be home or you want to be in a tree stand yourself, you got to keep that drive going. Right,
because timing is everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've been on cases where I walk in and all of a sudden the guy's walking in with his bucket and drops apples there while I'm there. So, but then you got like that case, days, weeks. We worked one case weeks and weeks and weeks with cameras. It was a mile in. We had to hike a mile every night in the dark because when they weren't there, set up there, and it was this bear baiting case, and set up cameras and do a ton of work, and then spring the trap, like you said. We get all our evidence, and to the point where even I put a camera where I thought was so obvious it was just above the tree, but right where he was dumping his stuff, I got a picture of his face looking up at the camera and him dumping out the donuts. So it was phenomenal that we got that evidence. So, and what's that, during the interview when he says, "Oh, I have no idea what you're talking about," and you slide the picture of him dumping the donuts out, him looking, directly, he's like, "How the heck did you get that picture?" So it's that satellite, spy stuff,
Yeah, and it is fun. I mean, it can be a lot of work, but there's a sense of satisfaction when you do make a good case. And
rewarding, yes.
When you get that confession and that person says something like that, "How'd you get that photo?"
Yeah.
I think, I got it because I'm a game warden, and that's what we do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we make a difference because when they poach a deer, if it's doe, they're taking, a couple things out of the system, and not just for that year, but for years to come too. And that's why we have a management system so we can manage populations. And, that there's a lot more to it when it's game, I think, other than, you got stealing this or this and that. They're stealing, but they're not replacing.
No.
And it takes a long time to replace that.
Exactly. And there's, certain people, they get a almost a disease where they have to kill things, and being able to take a person that just has no regard for the life of an animal, bringing them to justice is a satisfying thing.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's what's really different about our job is it's like the long term. I have the utmost respect for police departments and stuff, but I think it just seems like the longer thing and the conservation aspect of it. So, not that we certainly need our police officers and our troopers, don't get me wrong, but I just, and maybe it's part of us, the way that we're wired is, that environmental aspect of it.
And most of us, I know you are, Wayne, and I'm an avid outdoorsman. I love to hunt. And, someone that takes an illegal deer, they're taking that deer away from someone that could have gotten it following the rules. And, hey, the rules are there for a reason. We didn't make them. We're going to enforce them, and they're put there by people that know a lot more about managing a resource. And we're the boots on the ground that are out there.
Yeah, and the support we get from the good hunters is pretty awesome too, because they want us out there doing that exact same thing, catching those guys that are cheating because they're stealing their wildlife.
Exactly. It's most times you check people and they're happy to see you. They want to shake your hand. They want a photo. Most of our hunters, there's no reason for them to not be happy that we're there because we're working for them. So the people of New Hampshire, the sportsmen are great. A lot of them, they call you by name because you're the local warden. You may not remember them specifically, but they usually remember you. Right,
and I think that makes an effect in the enforcement too. If they know you and stuff, if they get that chance, that opportunity to cheat a little, they think, I know Graham Courtney. I don't know if I could look at him again if I took that opportunity, because I think we have that effect on our communities by being part of them. So
definitely,
having that relationship with hunters and seeing them every now and then, and shooting the conversation that goes on, because we usually spend a little time with them and we want to know about them, and it's heartfelt, to be honest with you, because I like to know who's out there hunting, and I like to know who I'm working for.
Exactly, I feel the same way, and we're part of the community. That's a great feeling as a warden. You're part of the outdoors community. You're also, we visit the schools. We really try to integrate ourselves into the community and work beyond just the sportsmen, but introduce people that may have no idea about hunting and fishing to a little bit about what we do and to a little bit about the wildlife that we have here in New Hampshire, because we are just so spoiled to have the coast, the mountains, and everything in between, and the diversity of wildlife and resources we have here. It's pretty special.
Yeah. Any Seacoast stories that stick out in your mind? Something related to that. I always think of the coastal stuff, and then maybe the funny stories or the unexpected stories or that type of thing. Something that
there are some characters down on the Seacoast, as there are everywhere, and we have our characters down the Seacoast. And one of the things that coastal enforcement used to really focus on was the illegal harvesting of softshell clams. It's a valuable resource. You can get good money for clams, and so there used to be a lot of people that would illegally dig clams under the cover of darkness or in some of the back creeks and try to sell them. Due to a lot of hard work and really hammering down before my time, the guys really put an end to that. And then the value of the clams wasn't quite what they used to be. But every now and then we still get the report that someone's out there doing it. And I got just that a couple years ago. There's a guy illegally digging clams. It wasn't clamming season. He was hiding in one of the back creeks. And so pretty easy to track. I followed his footprints in the sand to locate him clamming and introduce myself. You got a clamming license? Nope. You wear clamming clothes? Nope. And I could tell the guy was, not too happy to see me. So I explained to him, look, we're going to walk back to my truck. We need to talk about this. I'll carry your clamming fork, because that could be a pretty intimidating weapon.
Yep.
You carry the clams. And, he told me his first name's Dave. And so we're kind of going back to the truck. And, he kind of kept looking over his shoulder at me, and I'm getting a little bit squirrely feeling. He's like, so what's going to happen? I said, well, if you're decent, we'll handle it at the truck.
He said, that rabbit feeling, aren't you?
Right. He said, what if I'm not decent? And with that, he threw his clams into the water and started running. Now, he's barefoot, shorts, no shirt, and here I am fully geared up, heavy boots, gun belt,
Are you sinking into the clam flats, the mud or anything, or is it solid?
I'm slowly sinking into the mud, but I'm gaining on him.
Yeah.
He wasn't luckily he wasn't a very fast runner. So just when I got close to him, he started into the water. He's going to make a swim for it.
Oh boy.
I'm not,
You're not swimming
with my gear. And when I got close enough to the water, I sank up to my knees in mud, fell face first into the marsh mud, which if anybody knows what low tide smells like. So upon seeing that, he's like, oh, now I got him. He gets back on shore and starts hoofing it on shore again. And now I'm a little bit PO'd. So, again, I'm closing the distance on him, and now I'm yelling at him that he's under arrest. He's refusing to stop for me. And he starts into another crossing a creek. It's about 3 feet deep, and that's where I caught up to him. And I just kind of grabbed him in a bear hug from around the back. I said, knock it off, Dave. You're under arrest. And he started getting really squirmy. And I had the bright idea, well, he's resisting arrest now. I'm going to give him a little hit of pepper spray. Try to So at that distance, I got a little on him, but I got the bulk of it on myself.
Oh, boy.
So he dove into the water, quickly rinsed the pepper spray off by swimming away. And all I could do was, yell at him to stop as I could barely see.
Yeah, you had your eyes closed yelling.
And so that was a little taste of humility. We ended up, I put a call into
Was his real name
PD.
Dave?
His real name was Dave.
Okay, because I was wondering.
I put a call into the state police that I just deployed my pepper spray. I had a suspect flee on me into the Seabrook Marsh, and I could literally hear the sirens coming. A great job by Seabrook PD and the state police. We set up a perimeter, caught the guy in about 15 minutes with a state police K9.
Nice.
And it sticks in my mind. His last thing as we loaded him into the police car was, he was laughing. He said, "Super cop fell in the mud." So I still see him to this day. He holds no hard feelings. Neither do I. We laugh about it. And that's one thing about, people of the coastal community. Hey, you caught him. He said, I fought the law. The law won. We have a laugh about it. And I think he gave up his clamming career after that.
And I think that's a lot of being the game warden, because those guys that I caught wrote tickets to, we're on a good relationship, and it's just, hey, you learned your lesson, and move on. It's not personal.
No.
They're not personal unless you make it personal. It's, it's just a job. I want you to learn, and when we move on. Right.
We treat people with respect. Even him, I didn't, as tempting as I was to, retaliate with that super cop fell in the mud comment. I just said, load him in. I'm going home to get some dry clothes.
Because you can laugh about that later, too.
Right. I'm going home tonight. You're going to be wearing an orange jumpsuit.
That's right. That's right.
He went from a $93 ticket for clamming out a season to actually felony charges for, when he pushed me to get out of my grasp.
Yep.
He laid hands on a uniformed officer.
Yeah, and we take that serious.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, my career, we've had a couple of arrests. The guy did 60 days in the can for touching me, too, so which was good after a knockdown, drag-out trial. So, but... I think we all take that. And I think about the assaults on officers through my tenure, and every time, it's very, very serious, and we take it serious, and we try to prosecute them to the ultimate of the law. So everybody takes it serious and says, hey, work with them, they'll work with you, but, run or assault them, and, it's a whole different story.
You're making a life-altering decision if you decide you're going to fight it out with the police.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely, and like you said, those sirens are coming there. So there's more of us coming, when it happens. So.
And that's that was really my first experience of not having been in law enforcement for a short period of time. How much the law enforcement community supports each other, because these guys heard what had happened, regardless of whether they were town police, state police, other game wardens came from all over. Within a matter of 20 minutes, there were 2 other wardens there, and there were probably 15 cops. So it was a really nice feeling. You think, wow, these guys got my back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wish we had that up north. We do have it up north, but it'd be like 2 hours later you'd hear the sirens
you guys
coming.
Spread a little bit more up there.
Anything you want to say in conclusion, Grant? I really appreciate you, talking to me today and talking to everybody else, and sharing a little bit about what it's like to be a game warden, especially a coastal guy, because it's not all the same. We all have different experiences in the different places we live and work, and I think it's pretty awesome, to have those experiences. So I always enjoyed my time on the coast, but I always want to give guys opportunities if there's something they want to say, because this is about your show too. It's just not all mine. So.
Well, one thing I want to say, it was an honor to work with you, and still work with you. I'm glad that you maintain your deputy status, and you're here on your own time today working this sportsman show, and it's an honor to wear the same uniform as guys like yourself, and Jim Neal and Kevin Jordan, guys that are legends of the fishing game world, it really is a sense of honor and sense of pride. So I want to thank you for your guidance along the way, and just tell people, hey, when you see a game warden out there, unless you're doing something wrong, you got no reason to be nervous.
Absolutely.
We're outdoorsmen. We're people just like you. So, look forward to seeing anybody that's interested down the coast. If anybody's got any questions on recreational lobstering, recreational clamming, anything coastal involved, reach out, because as game wardens, we're not just here to uphold you to the laws. We're here to help you learn how to enjoy these resources. So wardens are going to give you tips on fishing techniques. We're going to give you tips on deer hunting stuff,
Absolutely.
if that's one of our things that we're interested in. And we want to see new people get into it. I go to the Clam Flats on Saturday, and I seek out the people that seem to be struggling a little bit, and I share what I know about digging clams. And
nice.
So we're ambassadors of the sport. We're not just there to hand out tickets.
Very well said. Thank you very much for saying that, and very well said. So
thanks for having me. I know you promised to buy me a steak and lobster dinner for doing this podcast.
Yeah,
so I'm looking
as
forward
long
to
as
that.
it's one of those ugly lobsters with that growth on it, that's good. Thank you. Please join me, Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and other game wardens on our adventures, protecting wildlife, saving lives, and having fun, all while serving the public and the natural resources of our planet. Listen to the tales and experiences of those who work in the outdoors while being entertained with stories about encounters with poachers, wildlife investigation, murder investigation, near-death experiences, search and rescue missions, wildlife interactions from game wardens around the country and around the world. When I retired, I realized I couldn't let go of that legacy, but rather wanted to share the passion, the commitment, and the stories of those men and women that call themselves game wardens. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and this is Warden's Watch.